A house is made of wood and stone, but only love can make a home. Welcome to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, helping you make your home into one you'll love even more. Here are your hosts, Dan Hansen and Betsy Thompson.
Well, good morning, everybody. Here we are, Saturday, doing it again. It just feels like the weeks just fly by, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody bases their entire week around Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. You know, once this starts, everybody takes this collective deep breath as we plunge forward into the true bliss of what it means to be alive, you know, listening to the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show. And then when it's over, man, it's the long slog until next week. But the good news is it's happening right now. The bad news is we're going to go to the vault one more time. It's been a busy week, and so I've pulled up some of my favorite segments, and hopefully next week we'll get back to new stuff. But for this week, we've got a lot of good stuff coming. We're going to be talking about roller covers. We're going to be dealing with rusty water if you struggle with that. And finally, we're going to hit a bunch of common paint mistakes. But right now, let's just jump straight in to one of the coolest tools I've ever seen. Well, Betsy, we live in a commercialized world where there are a lot of products out there. Mm-hmm. Television commercials have gotten very good. They've always been good at making these things look amazing. One that I remember is the spray-on hair.
Yes.
You know, from the 80s.
Yes.
And
it's supposed to make it look like you have all this very gorgeous, lush hair.
I always wondered what that exactly was. We're looking at a video right now of a balding gentleman, and it certainly looks like there's a bunch of fibers growing on his head.
Right.
But
I think
what
it's
is
just
it? Is it like silly string, only just the color of your hair?
That, or it's spray paint that like sticks through the few hairs that you have left.
I bet that's fun to clean up in the bathroom when you're done. Oh, when you're done doing your do. Or we're looking at another one that I think is really interesting, the Hawaii chair. It's basically a chair that you just shake all over the place, right?
You sit on it, and it makes it look like you're doing the hula or something like that.
There are so many things that are apparently going to make us healthier.
Right.
Save us time, save us this, save us that. And we all know it doesn't work that way. And yet, there's a part of us that really still wants to try it and wants to figure it out, right?
Uh-huh. Of course.
So if I ever go bald, I'm heading out to the silly string store. I'm going to see if I can fix myself.
Good plan.
But there are other things that we cannot possibly believe that they're going to work, and we're blown away when they really do. And we just ran into one of those, and it's right up our alley here on the show, and we want to talk about it because we know there are a lot of woodworkers out there. Yeah. Whether you're a hobbyist, whether you do this on a high-end scale, and this is what you do for a living. If you're in that group, you probably know about what we're going to talk about.
Probably.
But a lot of hobbyists are probably unaware that there is a table saw system out there, and it's not brand new technology. It's been around since 2004. I think the first one was sold.
Yeah.
It is a table saw that will detect flesh in its path and will stop so fast that you only nick your finger. So rather than chopping digits off.
Right.
Which on their website, we heard stories of people saying, I ran my hand through there and it was throwing fingers everywhere. That's when I paused the video and went to another video.
Right.
But that's what old, regular table saws do. My mom was always scared to death when Dad would fire up his table saw. Yeah. His joke was always dial 911, and then if you hear screaming, dial the other one.
Right.
And then send people his way.
Right, of course.
But tell them about the saw stop system, Betsy, because it's really, really cool.
Well, it's really cool. We actually stumbled upon it, I think, on the internet, of course. And we did the kind of typical, it sounds good, but does it really work? And
I ignored it completely.
Yeah.
But it was lingering in the back of my mind.
Right.
The name was.
Right.
And then we met Roger at the Evergreen Commons Wood Shop.
Yeah, a few months ago, he contacted us to do something totally different. He wanted us to come and do a wood finishes presentation for the people in their wood shop. And let me say, these people, when we say they have a wood shop and they are woodworkers, they do amazing, gorgeous, phenomenal things.
Yeah, I went thinking that we were going to, really rock it. We're going to tell them all about wood finishes and all these hobbyists.
I felt like they didn't need us.
No, we walked in and we saw all the amazing turned pieces that they've done.
It's just gorgeous.
Oh, it made me feel like I am such a hack. What am I doing here?
Right.
But we're glad we stayed because Roger mentioned in the course of our conversation there that just offhandedly, they use the saw stop system on their table saws.
Right.
As we were talking about wood finishes, that was playing in my head that he was referencing something that I was remembering.
Right.
And I put it all together later, as I normally do. They have this system that detects your flesh and will stop the saw. So suddenly we realized that there's this item out there that seems too good to be true that we can actually see firsthand.
Yeah, it's a really cool system. And the way it works is this particular saw works just like a normal table saw, but underneath the table by the blade, there is an aluminum brake. It sits very, very close to that blade, and it's spring-loaded. And there's an electrical signal that runs through that blade as it's spinning. And if you get too close and your finger touches that blade,
Nix it.
yes, you end up tripping that signal. You break the signal, and within split seconds,
5 milliseconds, they say.
yes, that brake will release, that spring pops out, the brake releases, stops the blade. Because of the momentum, that blade comes back down below the table, and your finger just is left with this little tiny nick.
If that.
If that.
If that. It's like airbag technology, but they say it's 10 times faster.
Yes, the blade retracts. Everything happens within 5 milliseconds. That's from the second you touch it to it being completely under the table. I mean, that is fast.
Right. It's called, like we said, it's called the saw stop system, and amazing. Absolutely amazing. When we talked, we went back then later and asked Roger about the system because why not? Absolutely. He says it really works well. They've tripped it. He said, I believe he counted 6 times in 6 months.
Yeah.
So on average, once a month it trips.
Right.
Now, it can trip because the wood is too wet.
Right.
You know, they've got rules about that. You don't cut wet wood. There's different blades to use
cut
for
pressure-treated
wood.
Right.
And if there are metal pieces like staples or something like
Right.
that. And he said inevitably what happens is somebody gets new wood from a big box lumberyard and they've got the staple on the end with the little tag.
Right.
And they don't pull that out. The blade hits that. It triggers the system.
Right.
When the system triggers, the brake is broken at that point. It will launch and you have to completely replace that cartridge.
Right.
It's about $70 or so, I think, to replace that cartridge. You could damage the blade.
It is possible.
Roger said that most of the time the blade, they want to repair that or change it. But he's had a couple instances where they didn't need to change the blade.
Right.
So you're looking at about $100 or so. If you've got to do a blade, it's going to be more than that.
Right.
But think about what an ER visit is.
The copay alone.
Yeah, because he was saying a couple of the instances were the wood was wet or there was metal.
Right.
But a number of the other instances, it triggered because somebody touched the blade. And it saved their finger, no damage, maybe a Band-Aid is needed, and then 5 minutes of swapping the system out, putting a new brake in, putting a new blade on. 5 minutes later, you're up and running again. No trips to the ER, no dialing 911. And the thing is, the saws really aren't that much more expensive than a regular saw. He thought they were about maybe a third more, which may sound like a lot, but 2 trips to the ER. I mean, just having all your fingers.
Right.
It's worth checking out. You got to look into it.
Yeah, you can go online to check it out. We'll have the video in our show notes of just how fast the thing works.
Well, and they show you how it is by running a hot dog towards the blade.
Yes.
And they don't even get to cut through the hot dog.
No.
The blade goes
No.
that fast. It nicks the hot dog.
Right. You can also, there's a place in Grand Rapids on 28th Street. It's called Woodcraft. You can also go down there, and they are a dealer for these saws. So you can go and check it out for yourself, get some pricing, maybe look into it because, I mean, let's face it, it's better to be safe than sorry.
If you do any kind of woodworking at all, it's something to look into. One of the things on the website that we ran into is lots of woodworkers say, this is the one thing that my spouse was really cool with me buying for the shop.
Yep.
Other tools, they kind of look at and say, do you really need to do that? With this one, definitely worth it.
Yes, it is.
Now, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to dig into the somewhat sad history of the roller cover. And then we're going to be solving your rusty water problems with Gordon Water. All of that is just ahead, so stick around.
Helping you turn your house into your dream home. This is the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show, presented by Benjamin Moore on News Radio Wood 1300 and 106.9 FM.
Betsy, if you had to name inventions that were completely revolutionary, what would some be?
The wheel.
Well, the wheel, yes. That's a good one.
That's the first one that comes to most people's mind.
Yeah,
I
we
think.
don't get anywhere, literally, without that.
Because you even needed those when horses were pulling your buggy.
Right.
Yeah.
So somebody somewhere, hey, look at this. It rolls. That's pretty cool. We wouldn't have rolling pins without the wheel.
Right.
And then we wouldn't have pizza.
Well,
we could, because we could
The
spin
Greeks,
it.
the Romans, all of them had wheels.
Yeah.
They all needed wheels.
Well, congratulations. You got a good one. I was thinking printing
right.
press.
Yeah, that's always a big one for
The
people.
computer.
Yeah, nowadays.
Right? What would we do without computers? YouTube.
I remember the days without computers.
Yeah. YouTube. What would children do? I don't know what my kids would do if YouTube had not
What
been
would
invented.
the DIY world do without YouTube?
Well,
let's face it.
Okay, so you're getting into that. So let's talk about what we wanted to really dig into on this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the most, I guess you can't say the most, it could be. It's one of the most revolutionary inventions for the DIY world, and it's the roller cover. And let's make the case for that. And it's a very sad story, so it's going to win all the way around.
Get your tissues out. You're going to need them.
Right. So you got the roller cover. It's a really basic common tool, and we don't really think about it. But it completely did, like we're saying, it almost created the DIY industry, at least when it came to home decorating, and the work that we commonly do now
because
really wasn't done before by homeowners.
Before the roller cover came into play, the way paint was applied was with a brush. And we actually have some of these brushes from painters back in,
Back in the day?
Yeah, before the roller cover. They're huge, they're heavy, and it took a lot of skill to put paint on a wall or a ceiling so that it looked smooth when it was done. I mean, we stumbled across a video where they're actually sending people...
It's a video from 1945.
Yeah, where they send guys to school to learn how to apply paint properly, and all the video is they're using a brush.
On everything, ceilings, walls, everything is a brush.
Those guys had to be like Popeye because that brush is so big and so heavy.
Exactly. So that's what it was. It was very skilled, and it was very much relegated to a trade. Painter, you would bring in a painter to do that. Not as many people would do this on their own.
Yeah.
And then along comes the roller cover in 1940. And all of a sudden, it made it a lot easier for people to get really acceptable to great paint results on their own.
Yeah, and that did not make some of these contractors happy.
Well, the contractor unions were unhappy.
Yeah, because all of the work was being taken over by the homeowners. I mean, suddenly they didn't need to hire someone.
A large chunk of it, and they felt like the skill was going out of the trade.
Right.
And so the unions actually fought against the rollers. So painter unions didn't want to use rollers, or at least an element within there. There was this battle, and eventually the pro roller contractors won out, and they could use them. But anyway, the reason that we think it was such a big invention for the DIY world is that it really put all of this in everybody's hands now. Everybody could paint their own home, start dabbling with decorating and all of that. So what makes it a sad story?
Well, it's really, you think when someone invents something that they're going to become really rich and famous off of it?
That is the dream. Like, my brother-in-law wants to invent a toilet seat that you push a little lever, like those little garbage cans.
Oh,
and the lid goes up, and then you step off, and it goes down.
Right.
I think it's been invented now, but he had that idea a long time ago. It's going to make it rich.
Well, the thing is, the guy who actually invented the roller cover doesn't even get credit for it. Most people have never even heard of him. Someone else gets the credit for his invention.
We don't even know how to say his name, how to pronounce it.
I believe it's Brakey. His first name is Norman, so maybe we'll just call him Norman.
Norman Brakey, as in heartbreaky.
Yes. This is a very heartbreaky story.
It could be Breaky, but we're going to go with Brakey.
Right.
But anyway, he was born in 1890 in Chicago.
Yes.
At least that's what we seem to uncover. The general idea is that he was born in Canada.
Yes.
But we found other evidence that seems to really seal the deal that he was born in Chicago.
Yeah.
So he's American born. But he moved to Manitoba and then later to Toronto and spent most of his life in Canada.
Right. So then in 1940, he gets this inspiration and he decides that maybe he could invent something to help the painters. You know, it seems, why are you up there brushing all these things? There's got to be a way to make something that can apply it
but even that
more evenly.
Is a supposition. You're making a guess. We don't even know why he made it. We don't know if it was for his own sake that he decided this is maybe quicker, or if he was trying to revolutionize an industry. We don't know. Like with the tape one that we talked about, the masking tape, we knew the origin of that. The reason the need was there, and we know the circumstances. We know nothing. We just know that he came up with this idea of a cylindrical core with a fabric cover that would soak up and distribute the paint when rolled over a smooth surface. So he brings all these drawings and stuff and files for a patent with the patent office in Ottawa, Canada. Now, they evaluate it, and they grant him, at least according to a lot of the documents that we dug into, they grant him a patent, which is important because a lot of places will say he never filed for a patent. But it looks like he actually did, and he got it. And that was basically the high point of this whole experience for him, because everything from there is downhill. Because now he's got this patent, and so he goes to start creating prototypes, and Betsy found a great quote. It's long, but we're going to read it. It is long. It was from the Globe and Mail in 1984, and there's a gentleman named Tom Hamilton from AB... I don't know what that is. Saya? Yeah, Fabrics? We're guessing. It doesn't matter. Anyway, he recalled, Norman was a white-haired gent who was full of purpose. He wanted my opinion on the best kind of fabric that offered a stiff, bristly nap. I asked for what purpose, and he said, for rolling paint. I scratched my head, but he resolutely went on and described to me something with a handle shaped like a 7 that would hold a cardboard fabric-covered cylinder. If my theory is right, this thing will revolutionize painting in Canada, he said. Well, the best thing I could think of was that bristly green mohair velour that was used to cover railway touring coaches in those days. So I sold him a bolt of that. Later, he came by and thanked me for my advice. He gave me one of his original roller covers and a tray that had been hammered out by a local tinsmith. Neither of us knew how big his invention would get to be. Right. That's Tom Hamilton, the guy who sold Norman Brakey the first fabric to use on his prototype covers. Yes. And from there, everything seemed perfect. But... the obstacles started to mount almost immediately. Norman couldn't find anybody to back this invention. He needed investors to get on board and to give him the money so he could make enough of these to actually make it work. And he couldn't sell it to anybody. So whether he was a terrible salesperson or they just could not catch the vision, we'll never really know, but it never happened. But that was just one side of his difficulties. The next side came up when his patent was contested. Yeah, an American, Richard Croxton Adams, descended from the presidential Adams, claimed that he invented the roller cover in his basement that exact same year. And it suggested that he kind of tweaked Brakey's idea a little bit and actually contested the patent. Right, so he takes his idea, makes a few changes, presents it as his own, and now there's a contested patent. And so the problem that happened is that Brakey didn't have the money to go and actually fight this. So he had to just give it up, and the patent goes to Richard Croxton Adams. And from there, the rest is history. He is credited, at least in writing, as the creator of the roller cover. But sadly, there's very little recognition for this DIY visionary, Norman Brakey, who died very poor and with nobody really knowing what he did. That's okay. We have just informed a lot of people about what he did. And we've made all the descendants of Richard Croxton Adams angry in the process. Yes, I want to say it was suggested by some people that he copied the idea. Of course, there's another group that say that's not so. Well, of course. There's always two sides to every story. All right, now, coming up after the break, we are going to be talking about that rusty look that you get sometimes from your water and how to fix that. That's next. Stay tuned.
If you want to take your DIY skills up a rung, the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show is here to give you a boost on News Radio Wood 1300 and 106.9 FM.
And we're back, and we are going to solve Betsy's problem today.
Well,
and hopefully other people's, well, yes, one of them.
Right.
Yes, there is a multitude of issues we could address. Right. But only a couple that I believe our guest is really wanting to get into.
Well, I am guessing that if we have anyone listening in the Kalamazoo area,
at all,
they may have, they may have a similar problem. Did you tell everyone that we're here in the studio
No,
with
I was
Tom
going to let you do that.
Dijsterhoff? Okay, we are in the studio with Tom Dijsterhoff, Vice President of Gordon Water Systems. Tom, thanks for coming back. We've had you on a couple other times.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I apologize for Betsy's really klutzy introduction there.
Right.
I completely forgot to do it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Your klutz was better than my non-effort.
All right. Anyway, Kalamazoo water. I briefly talked about it in a different segment. We talked about water softeners. But there is like a rusty something because it gets all over my shower curtain. I bought a brand new shower curtain and it has already started to turn in just a couple of weeks. It's got that pinky rusty color. My shower walls, which are white, continually has that horrible color on it, and it's a bear to get off. What is going on and how do I fix it?
Well, what you're experiencing is iron.
Okay.
Iron is oxidizing and it turns into what we call rust. Iron you don't see until it becomes oxidized and it turns to the color that it is.
Right.
Now, iron or rust in city water has been oxidized through the use of chlorine. Mm-hmm. And so what can happen in your instance is it's actually settling slowly into the pipes.
Okay.
And yes, you're getting it continuously in your house. Interesting thing, when they do the hydrant flushes in the spring, they'll bust a bunch free from the pipes because they're flowing water so fast. We'll get calls. We know when they're going to do hydrant flushing.
Yeah.
We'll get calls from, my softener's not working. Well, were they flushing hydrants this week in your neighborhood? Oh, I did see water flowing. Yeah, okay. Well, they busted a bunch free. It's just hammering your house.
I've noticed that there are a couple times a year, it seems like, when you turn on the faucet and it's just like nasty brown water.
Yeah, well, that's flushing the pipes because that's what they want to try to minimize, right? They don't want it to stay there for decades. So that iron is going to pass through a softener, the stuff that they're flushing through.
Okay.
With a water softener, there's a couple of things. One is when you eliminate the hardness, it reduces the ability for the iron to stick because there's no rock stuck to your shower wall or shower curtain or whatever. It still will color, but it's not nearly as difficult to remove as if you have hardness and iron together.
Okay.
The flip side is a water softener does reduce iron quite well, and there's two reasons. One, we put a pre-filter in on every water softener, and a pre-filter is a rock stopper.
Okay.
It's a cheap insurance policy, quite frankly, because it keeps the sediment, whether you got city water or private well. There's stuff that comes in from a well. There's stuff that comes in from the city. And it eliminates it right as it comes in, before it gets into a water softener, before it gets to your faucet, the little aerator heads that you have to clean out once in a while because you're getting this weird spray out, and you pull it out and you see chunks in there.
Yeah. Yep, I have that.
It gets rid of that. So the pre-filter will stop some of those particles.
Okay.
A water softener will remove a good share of that iron. And on those instances where they're flushing, there's no easy answer. We can put in equipment to address that. Unfortunately, it would only be really utilized several times a year when they're doing the big flushing.
Right.
So a lot of people, we just say, flush your own water, your water heater, and hot water, cold water, till it runs clear. Because your softener and pre-filter are going to do what they need to do. So on private wells, it's a different issue, because when we come out and do the water test in your home, a free water test, and there's iron present, there's color.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we do an iron test on the raw water, then we run it through a miniature softening column. My water specialists come in and they have a little mini softener.
They do that and we can watch?
Yeah, you can participate. Really? You get to count the drops and look at the colors.
That's exciting.
It is quite fun, actually. But I'm kind of weird in that way. So anyway, what we do is we test the raw water, and if there's iron present, we run it through the mini softener and we test it again. If the iron is gone, then it's a type of iron that the water softener can remove. The vast majority of the time, that's the case. And the water softeners we have, they have something called upflow brine.
Okay.
My dad started that back in the 70s. He had upflow brine on the water softeners he sold. And he absolutely put the big competitor in the marketplace in Kalamazoo, actually, kind of rocked them back on their heels because he was all of a sudden putting smaller units in with far better efficiencies and getting better results. And so people were using less salt to have nice, clean, soft water and had a smaller footprint in their basement. All of our equipment has upflow brine, whether it's our single tank electrics or our twin tank non-electric Kinetico. And they handle brine or handle rust really well. Now, when we test in a home, in a private well, and we run it through the miniature column, and let's say the iron gets reduced to half what the raw water is, we know that the softener is going to do a portion of it, but there's iron left, and that iron is not going to be removed by the water softener. It's called ferric iron. And what we need to do in that case is take a look at an iron reduction system that goes before the softener. And there's a couple of systems we sell, but we've got a fantastic one. We've had a relationship with Hellenbrand for many years, and they've put together an iron reduction system that we've really appreciated working with. And so we have the ability to knock the rust, and when you do that, you also can eliminate maybe rotten egg odor if it's present. And then we go into the softener. And now your house is getting, it doesn't stink, it doesn't have color, and it's soft. So
we had the stinky water at home.
Rotten egg?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't believe we had any other systems than a water softener put in.
Yep.
And it never got rid of the stinky water. The stinky
Softeners
water
don't address
always,
odor. Yeah.
So what about, and maybe this is a really dumb question, but as is my way, I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
We get a lot of people that come into the store at RepcoLite or Port City Paints, and they'll ask about all the rust on their siding, from the sprinklers and stuff. They have cleaners to get it off and things like that.
Yep.
Is this something that, I guess it depends on where they're getting that water from. Let's say, in my instance, at my house, I've got a well for all of that, for the sprinklers.
Okay.
And I've got city water in the house.
Okay.
So I'm not using the city water outside.
Okay.
I would have to have two. Of course, I'd have to have two systems at that point. Does anybody ever do that to deal with outdoor problems like that?
Yeah, the outdoor, because there's such an investment, not only in the home, but in a lot of times landscape, rocks, driveways, you want to protect the appearance of that. And there is something that we work with that actually is an injection system for your outside faucets or sprinkling system. And it sequesters the iron, and it makes a huge difference. You still have to clean off whatever's on there first, but you're not going to continue to add to it nearly as much. Some people are totally sad. They never see rust again.
Well, some of them can be really bad. I mean, we've all
I've
driven
seen
by
pictures
houses
of-
where it's orange on the side.
Yeah, oh my.
And right where the sprinklers hit.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a nice arc,
Yeah.
It's kind of cute sometimes.
So there is at least something that will address that
Yes.
issue.
Yep.
And you carry that as well?
We
You
do.
can help people with that?
Yep.
Now, is there anything else that we need to think about, or really did you
Maybe
sum
that
up
we
the-
need to filter out. 'Cause
Right.
Are there
Think
other
about-
things other
There's
than
a
just
lot that I
iron?
should filter out. But in my water.
Yes, in your water. There is something that causes color that an iron filter system doesn't address. Actually, it can hurt the iron filter system, nor will a water softener address. And it's called tannins. And tannins is decayed plant life. So a good example of what tannins can be is in the fall when you see a puddle and there's leaves from the trees that are in the puddle and the water is not crystal clear, but it has a tea type color to it.
Yeah.
Same thing happens underground. Decaying plant life or organic matter can percolate down to your well and gets pumped up into your house. That tannin will pass through a water softener, iron filter system, etc., and it gets into your toilets or into your shower, and it can do a little bit of staining. But it's also one of those things where we had a customer on the lakeshore. She had tannins, and she kept flushing the toilet thinking one of her grandsons wasn't flushing the toilet. Well, it was really the tea color caused by the tannic acid. And so there's things we can do with that. Tannins with iron can pose a little bit of a challenge, but we've got ways to address it. And if there's no iron present, we can put in a tannin softener. Oddly enough, it's called a tannin softener. different media does different things, but it can end up with nice, clean, clear water. And quite frankly, following iron filtration and a softener and some tannin removal, we always recommend an RO system just to make the water taste pristine and make sure you're getting clean, clear water for all your drinking and cooking.
Is that what you would put on if you have that chlorine smell in your water, like city water?
I would fully recommend an RO system anyway, because I'm partial to it. That way, regardless of the contaminant of the day, and there's been several over the last few years in the news,
right?
You're taken care of. You don't care what tomorrow's new contaminant is, because good quality RO system like the Connecticut K5, it's awesome.
Does that hook up to the water softener, or do you have to put it like at every faucet in the house?
Well, we've actually done some plumbing from an RO system to multiple points, whether it's a bar or bathroom or kitchen or ice maker, et cetera, et cetera. Most people, if we're able to put it in the basement, feeding soft water to it, we'll then run tubing, if we can, up to the kitchen sink and to the refrigerator. Those are kind of the two biggies for ice making and water dispensing.
And the main toilet. You want that water pristine as well, in case the dog drinks.
Yeah,
I'm concerned about the dog.
On the toilet, so the dog doesn't
I've got
drink
5
out of
kids
there.
at home. The lid is never closed, and I'm constantly flushing that toilet. Maybe I've got tannin problems too. Either that, or
dude,
my
we've
kids.
talked enough that you need my water specialist to come out and help you. All the problems.
Let's face it.
Yeah, I
we're
got a lot
both
of
in that
problems.
boat.
But the whole rusty water thing is a real pain. I know my mom. We grew up with that, and the stuff on the siding. That was really minor. What really got Mom was the clothes that she continually wrecked washing clothes. I mean, it was a constant battle because she'd wash them, and now they've got rust stains in them, and she can't fix them. You could help her.
Absolutely.
You could help anybody in that boat.
Yes, sir.
Tom, if our listeners have questions, if this has really got their brains moving and they want to get in touch with you, maybe get somebody out to do a free water analysis, you said?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You can direct them as to what they might need. How's the best way to get in touch?
Easy way is gordonwater.com, and we've got a request for quote or a free water test button, and that's very quick and easy. If you want to call us, we cover all of populated West Michigan. We touch 13 counties. You can call 1-800-WATER-68.
1-800-WATER-68. I am dialing as we speak, or can I just make arrangements with you before you leave?
I think that's probably better.
Yeah.
Will get me taken care of right away. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about some common paint mistakes and, more importantly, how you can avoid them. That's all just ahead. Stay tuned.
If you want to take your DIY skills up a rung, the RepcoLite Home Improvement Show is here to give you a boost on News Radio Wood 1300 and 106.9 FM.
Well, Betsy, let's talk about paint mistakes.
They're common.
Paint mistakes. Paint mistakes are common. I know we've talked on the show. Remember, was it last year at the Home and Garden Show, one of those shows that we were at, a listener came by, and I remember talking to him about a project, and he kind of waved us off and said, he loves the show, but he hires all his painting done. And I said, no, come on, everybody can do it. And we're great, help you find the contractor and all of that. But you can do it. And he said, no, I can't. You don't know. Do you remember the story? It was the craziest story I've ever heard. That wasn't me. He was painting a tiny little bathroom with his wife.
Oh, yes, this one.
And and his wife had said exactly what I was saying. You can do it. She's always been the painter, but she convinced him, you can do it. Let's just get in there. It'll be a team effort.
Mistake number 1.
Yes. And he said he got his little tray out. She had her tray, and he started painting, and he bumped something with the tub.
Yeah.
So he got paint on something that he shouldn't have. So he set the tray down, grabbed a rag, wiped it off.
Yes.
Feeling pretty good. Took a step back, stepped on the edge of his tray, and flipped it straight up into his shin. So all the paint, everything, all over his foot, all over his shoe, dripping all over the floor.
Right.
He's just stunned.
It's a disaster.
So then he's demonstrating in the booth. He's holding his head, and oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
Right.
He said, I just needed to sit down for a second. So he sits down on the toilet. And that's where his wife had left her paint tray.
Yeah.
So he sits in her paint tray.
So now he's just like the giant paint man.
Yeah, she told him, stop helping. I retract what I said. Not everybody can do it. And he was sent somewhere else. Maybe this was all some grand ploy. But paint mistakes do happen. That kind of paint mistake is pretty extreme.
Right.
But now let's deal with some common paint mistakes we see all the time. The first one that really I can relate to, is jumping the gun on a project.
Yeah, that happens when people, plan, they sit there and go Thursday night, I'd really like to repaint the living room, and I want to do it on Saturday. So you have now left yourself one day to go and choose your paint color, to go and get your paint, all the supplies, do all the prep work, all of those things that you need to do.
Yeah.
You've left yourself one evening to do.
And that happens all the time. We're
does.
watching something on TV and we just think, you know what? Painting the room.
do that.
Because painting the room, generally, if you do a fair amount of painting, painting a living room can go very fast.
Yeah.
What you don't think about is, like Betsy said, all the prep work and all of that. And the biggest thing when this problem comes up is, like you said, we get people in the store on a Thursday who are starting to get the panic because they have to get a color.
Yeah.
And so what they'll do is they'll just pick a color. Well, the thing is, if you're not comparing it to, you're looking at the colors in your setting with your lighting, you can make a huge mistake because tan isn't always tan.
Right.
Gray isn't just gray.
Yeah, people are always surprised when they're looking at colors and you show them, 5, 6, 7 different grays, and one is very blue, one is very green, one is very yellow, so on and so forth.
When compared to each other, they look that way.
Right.
Separated by themselves, they look gray.
But if you put them in certain lights or if you put them with certain things, all of a sudden you have a pink room instead of the tan or beige that you thought you were going to have.
Just talked to a customer and she brought up a pink room. She bought a tan and she said, I had no idea tan could lean towards pink.
Yeah.
And now she's got this room that she's got to repaint. That all happens when you don't give yourself enough time.
Yeah.
Akin to this, doing the whole surprise makeover thing is not a recommended plan. It looks great on TV. It seems to work on TV. In real life, it doesn't usually play out too well.
And you know what? Parents quite often do this to their kids. Like the kids go away to camp or the kids go away for the weekend or whatever. And then, this is their birthday surprise. And then it's not what the kids want. You don't do this to people. Let them be involved because people want to feel like they have something invested in what is happening.
It's so personal. It's their space. Usually it's their room that you're doing.
Yeah.
They want to have a part to play in that, and you don't want to just steer it in a certain direction.
Yeah.
Another mistake is not using quality products.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot of the times with roller covers. People will try to cheap out. They'll buy good paint and buy a cheap cover or a cheap brush. The thing you need to remember with that is that roller or that brush, that's what's affecting the look of the finished paint on your wall. You can buy great paint, cheap out on the roller cover, and your end results can look very poor.
Right.
Also, make sure you go and splurge for a good gallon of paint. You're probably going to pay $5 to $8 more.
Right.
Maybe a little more, depending, but on an average room, it's 2 gallons, and it's going to hold up better, wash up better, cover better, hide better, apply better. It's just a win-win all the way around for a few extra bucks.
Well, and that leads me to one last common mistake that people make, and it's they don't do the prep work, and especially the cleaning. I'm thinking of kitchen cabinets when they don't get washed well. You can buy the best gallon of paint, but it's only going to be as good as the surface that you're putting it on. So if it is not completely clean, it doesn't matter how good that paint is because it's not going to stick to something that's dirty.
Prep work is boring,
but it is key.
So take the time to do that.
Right.
Another reason not to just jump into a project on a weekend.
Thursday.
Unless it's a small project.
Right.
But
like a piece of furniture.
Whatever you decide to do, we gladly love to help you figure out the best way to go forward. Just stop out at any RepcoLite or Port City Paint store. Tell us what you're working on, and we'll help you figure it out. And there you go. Another episode in the books. If you want to hear it again, find it again, share it with somebody, you can find it online at RepcoLite.com. Whatever you do today, make sure paint's a part of it. And remember, the RepcoLite and Port City Paint stores are open till 3 o'clock this afternoon, waiting to help. I'm Dan Hansen. Thanks for listening.